10 Greatest Emergency Landings. Over the past few decades, there have been some phenomenal feats of piloting that have saved the lives of many passengers. In this video, we'll take a look at the 10 top most heroic emergency landings. Air Canada Flight 143. On 23rd of July, 1983, when the pilots of the flight heard a loud bong in the cockpit, it was a warning bell they'd never heard before, even during the time of simulated training emergencies. The sound indicated that both engines of the jet were out of fuel, which was en route from Montreal to Edmonton, Canada. Reports show that the near disaster in the air was caused by a blunder on the ground. The ground crew filled the jet with hardly half the fuel it needed for the journey. The captain, Robert Pearson, piloted the plane to a decommissioned Canadian Air Force base in Gimli. The place was vacated immediately, and the jet glided to safety with all of its 61 passengers unharmed except for 2 small injuries. The flight was known as Gimli Glider. China Airlines Flight 006. On 19th of February 1986, the China Airlines was performing its daily Flight 006 from Taipei Chiang Kai-shek International Airport to Los Angeles International Airport when something went wrong. When cruising over the Pacific Ocean at 41,000 feet, the plane suddenly lost power to the number 4 engine. As the crew worked to troubleshoot the problem, the aircraft slowly turned over until it suddenly entered a dive and spiraled down out of the sky while the puzzled pilots tried to regain the control. And when it seemed like all hope was lost, the captain, Min Won-ho, regained and leveled the plane by regaining his bearings. The captain defeated the odds by directing the aircraft to San Francisco, which isn't at a long distance from the original destination, Los Angeles. Aloha Airlines Flight 243. On 28th April of 1988, the Aloha Airlines flight went through an explosive decompression. It was scheduled between Hilo and Honolulu, Hawaii. The roof flew off the plane, and the flight attendant, Clarabella Lansing, was ejected into the void. The co-pilot was handling the plane when this incident happened. Captain Robert took over and steered the plane to begin an emergency landing in Maui, which he managed to safely descent without sacrificing any more lives. In addition to the fatality of Lansing, 7 flyers and another FA experienced serious injuries. Later, they got to know that just before ascending, damage to the plane was reported by a passenger who didn't mention it to the crew at the moment. TACA Airlines Flight 145. On 24th of May, 1988, TACA Airlines flight, which was scheduled from Belize to New Orleans, the flight encountered tumultuous thunderstorm activity on its final way to its destination. The jet was pounded by winds and rainfall, and the captain soon realized his engines wouldn't start. The brand new aircraft suffered flameout in both engines, but the pilots made a victorious emergency landing on a grass levee right next to NASA's Michoud Assembly Facility. No one on board was severely injured, except for a few minor bruises and only small hail damage to the intact plane. British Airways Flight 5390. This was a flight from Birmingham Airport in UK for Malaga Airport in Spain. On the 10th of June in 1990, the jet suffered explosive decompression, which resulted in no loss of life. When the plane was flying over Didcot, Oxfordshire, an improperly installed windscreen panel detached from its frame, causing the captain to be ejected out of the jet. Fortunately, the captain was partially held via the window frame for 20 minutes until the first officer descended at Southampton Airport. The windscreen panel in question had been changed 1 day before the flight. The shop manager did not mention the maintenance manuals to look up the exact bolts. Everyone on the jet made it out alive. US Airways Flight 1549. The flight is also called the Miracle on the Hudson, which made an emergency landing in the Hudson River on 15th of January 2009. The jet just took off from the LaGuardia Airport in New York City when a bird strike by a flock of Canadian geese completely damaged the engines and caused an almost utter loss of thrust right after takeoff. The captain and his crew members safely guided the jet to a water landing on the river. Few of the passengers were treated for hypothermia, but only 5 flyers were seriously injured. Especially a flight attendant was cut on the leg and required surgery. LOT Polish Airlines Flight 16. On the 1st of November 2011, the passenger jet was scheduled from Newark, United States to Warsaw, Poland, but due to the leak in one of the jet's hydraulic systems happened right after takeoff, which resulted in a loss of all the hydraulic fluid providing the main landing gear system. The pilots made an emergency landing. All of the 231 people passengers were saved after the crew executed a successful wheels-up landing. Qantas Flight 464. On October 15, 2014, the captain, Jerem Zwart, and the first officer, Lachem Smal, negotiated an outstandingly dangerous landing when a ferocious thunderstorm battered Sydney Airport with 70 miles per hour winds. Despite the violent winds, thunder, and lightning, the captain was able to victoriously land the aircraft after circling the airport for an hour. The pilot was praised as a hero for descending the plane in near-perfect condition in spite of the difficult circumstances. United Airlines Flight 1175. On February 14, 2018, a quick trip turned into a near disaster. The jet experienced an in-flight separation of a fan blade in the right engine while over the Pacific Ocean en route to the Honolulu, Hawaii airport. Right before landing, the crew heard a loud bang, followed by a turbulent shaking of the airplane. The pilot halted the engine and declared an emergency. The jet began a drift-down landing, proceeding direct to H&L, where they made a single-engine descent without further disturbance. There were no reported injuries to the 374 flyers and crew on board, and minor damage to the plane occurred. Southwest Airlines Flight 1380. The calamity marred the April 17, 2018 voyage. The jet was en route to Dallas Love Field when the engine cowl broke in failure, and the fragments damaged the fuselage, causing an explosive depressurization of the plane after damaging a cabin window. The pilot conducted an emergency landing and diverted to Philadelphia Airport. One passenger was sucked out from the aircraft and died, along with 8 others suffering from minor injuries.